This is Real Estate Rookie, episode 207.
I don't need a lot of information to dive into something. I execute really quickly, where my husband is very much opposite. Like, he needs all the details. He maybe is a little bit more emotional about it than I am. Like, he needs to be brought along. And so one of the ways that I got him on board is just by communicating with him, keeping him in the loop about everything that I do. And then having him see how it's worked. So buying this Treehouse property was very stressful. It was like a 9-month ordeal. And I don't think anything could be ever more stressful than that. And so I think that having gone through that really helped him to see that things can work out, and just to have the confidence that we've done this so many times, we can continue to do it.
My name is Ashley Kerr, and I am here with my co-host, Tony Robinson.
And welcome to the Real Estate Rookie Podcast, where every week, twice a week, we bring you the inspiration, information, and stories you need to hear to help kickstart your real estate investing journey. And I'm here with my lovely co-host, Ash. What's going on? What's new in Western Buffalo these days?
Well, I'm actually leaving Buffalo. I went to Idaho last week, and I'm going back to Idaho
this is a recurring
weekend.
Theme. Right?
I even get a little Idaho twang. But yeah, so I just decided I'm going to take my kids to Idaho this time. I went for a conference last week, and now we're hopping on a plane Friday, and we're going to go to Coeur d'Alene and hang out with some friends. I have a couple friends that are doing a triathlon, so we're going to go watch that and, yeah, have some fun.
Enjoy it. There you go.
And you're headed out today too, somewhere.
Yeah,
right?
not to anywhere as fun as Joshua Tree is cool too. Now, but we're heading out to Joshua Tree. So our new operations manager, she just flew in from North Carolina. So we're going out there to meet her so she can get introduced to the whole team. So our new assistant we hired, our cleaning crew, our handyman crew, we're all getting together. Just gonna have a big team dinner and all kind of just have some good time, have some fun outside of all the Airbnb stress that we've created for ourselves. So.
Yeah. Cool. That sounds fun.
Yeah.
Are you guys going to stay out there? Are they staying? Is your new operations manager going to stay in one of the Airbnbs to kind of?
She's actually staying all week. Yeah. So she's going to be rotating through a different property each night just so she can kind of get a feel for each place. We thought about staying, but we've been traveling so much lately that the thought of not sleeping in my own bed right now is probably one of the worst things that I could think about. So we're just going to stay out there late and come back home and sleep in our own bed tonight.
So I'm excited about today's episode. I thought Amanda was super energetic, and she has something really cool that she just invested in and started opening. I'm not going to give it away. I'll let you guys listen and see what it is, but it's almost run as a short-term rental and a business model, but it's not a house. It's something unique that she's doing. But Amanda gives great tips about having that work-life balance, and things that you can kind of do to keep that. I mean, there's no way to make your work-life balance perfect or to balance it. If someone says that they have it perfect, they're lying. They're not telling the truth. They're not being honest. So I think Amanda says a couple things that can really resonate with you if that is something that you think you're struggling with, is creating your work-life lifestyle, I guess we can call it.
She also touches on, and I get this question a ton, about getting your spouse on board and kind of what that process looked like for her and her husband, and how she was able to navigate that in her own relationship. So just like Ashley said, lots of good nuggets throughout this entire episode. So we're excited to bring you her story.
Amanda, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us. Do you want to get started with telling us a little bit about yourself and how you got started in real estate?
Yes. Thank you, Tony and Ashley, for having me. I'm a big fan of the show. I've actually been watching since the beginning, and I've learned a lot from the show. So hopefully today I can pay it forward and somebody somewhere can learn something from me. So my name's Amanda Salovitch. I'm from Maine, and I live here with my husband, Ross, and I actually have 3 kids that are 5 and under. So Ivy, who is 5, my middle child, Tatum, who's 4, and then my son, Roman, who is almost a year old. He's 11 months old. And so busy life. I'm a full-time working mom, and then my husband has a full-time job currently, and then we invest in real estate on the side, and I'm also a licensed real estate agent. So there's a lot of things going on in this house.
Just a little busy, right?
Just a little full. I like to say full, not busy, because we've chosen this lifestyle, if you will. And I actually like had a passion for real estate for a long time. So when I left college, I remember I moved in with my mom, and this is like back in 2008. And I had to ask my mom for like the $500 to get licensed as a real estate agent. And so, because I had no money, and I didn't really know anything about real estate at the time, I just knew that I was interested in it and might want to try like this new career opportunity. So I took the agent course, and I ended up starting with an agency where there was another younger person. And I was like fresh out of college. He was fresh out of high school. And so neither one of us had ever purchased a house before. And we wanted to like work our way into real estate. And like, if you know 2008, it wasn't really the ideal time, but we didn't know any different. And we also didn't have any bills. So when we would get a commission for selling a house, like we thought it was a big deal. Like, you know, we would split the commission and we were like living the life. And I ended up going a different direction in my career and taking a job for a large bank. And he ended up sticking with real estate and going more towards the investment side. And I had built up this really great career that I'm still in. I've been in it for 13 years or so and have had a lot of success. And I kind of like watched him over the years building his business as I was climbing this corporate ladder. And so I was just grinding. So I ended up getting married, having a couple of children. I was working so much, and I would leave the house at like 6:45 a.m., drop my kids at daycare, drive 45 minutes to work. You know, there was a point where I had like 200 colleagues reporting to me. I had a huge team, and I just thought like this was my life. I was going to be like some sort of CEO of the company. But it was hard, and it was tiring, and I was traveling a lot, and it was such a fast-paced lifestyle that when the pandemic hit, and things drastically changed for me, I ended up working from home. I had at that time I was working on projects, so a little bit different than managing people. So when they were having everybody work from home, all the projects were put on hold. And so I was at home, my children were still in daycare, and I had never really like been alone that much in my whole life. And so it was right when the Real Estate Rookie podcast started. And I always in the back of my mind knew I wanted to do something in real estate. I just was so busy that I never took the time. Like every now and then I would go look at a rental property over the years, or my husband and I did a couple of like accidental live-in flips. Our first purchase was actually a house hack, like an unknowing house hack. We had his brother. We've
had a lot of those on the podcast.
Yeah. I guess I'm a genius. I invented house hacking. Like we were offsetting our mortgage with him living there. And so we had done like a few little things. We had made some money selling houses and buying other houses. And so we knew a little bit about real estate. We had bought a few houses. And so I started listening to Real Estate Rookie and the Bigger Pockets podcast. And I met up with my friend, who is like such a mentor to me, Matt, and the one that I originally was working with. And he had done a ton of flips and pretty much every different kind of investment that you can think of in Maine he had done. And so he has guided me over the past couple of years. And in that first, in 2020, within like 6 months, I would say, of going down this journey of kind of just like learning how I can invest, I purchased 3 properties. I was pregnant for all 3 of those. So it's a little bit crazy. And then so those are 3 like long-term rentals. And then recently, within the past couple of months, I closed on another property, which is 3 short-term rentals. So taking advantage of that vacation market here in Maine. And they're actually kind of like a unique property. They're Treehouse rentals. And
Oh,
it's
we got to dive into that for sure. Treehouse
Yeah.
rentals. I don't think we've had anyone on the podcast that has something as cool and unique as that.
No.
But before you keep going, man, I just want to clarify. So you started your journey in 2020. Just kind of set the table for us. How many units are you currently at today in total?
Yeah, so I have 3 single family homes that are long-term rentals, and then I have 3 short-term vacation rentals.
That is amazing growth in a relatively short period of time. And there's a couple of things I want to go back to before we keep going. So first, you mentioned that you had this friend where you guys kind of started in real estate at the same time. You decided to climb the corporate ladder. He decided to build his real estate business, and both of those decisions are totally fine, right? Like you made the decision that you felt was best for your family. He made the one that he felt was best for him. But it just always, I think, stands out to me how society kind of preaches us and coaches us to want to climb this corporate ladder where, and a lot of people who climb the corporate ladder quickly, they're people who are ambitious, they're people who are driven, they're people who are disciplined. And it's like, if you took that same drive, ambition, and discipline and applied it to a business that you owned yourself, like how much could you do in 13 years?
Yes.
Right. And it's like, we just saw what you did from 2020, right? You're at 6 units in like two years, maybe. Imagine what you could have done in 13 years. And obviously I'm not saying this to poke fun at you, but it's just like, I think it's a lesson that I think a lot of the rookies need to hear, is that if you apply that same level of focus and dedication that you give to your day job to a business that you own yourself, you will be, mind blown with the achievements you can reach in a short period of time.
Yes. And like, I think about that all the time. It's like hard to look back and think, oh man, those properties I was looking at were so cheap. I wish I bought them. But honestly, like, what I've learned in my corporate job is completely invaluable. Like, I would not be able to do even close to what I've done if I didn't have that experience, especially with the projects that I work on, and like being able to manage change has been really helpful to me. And the other thing is, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of the Strength Finder.
Yeah.
I think it's called like the Gallup Strength Finder test.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
so that's something that I had taken through my corporate job. And it's funny you mentioned it, Tony, like one of my top strengths is an achiever. And so always looking to like, do the next thing, get the next thing. And I found that, so I always thought like, I wouldn't be satisfied like not having my corporate job, but I found that like it's just as satisfying, like closing deals. And not only that, but this past year, I also got relicensed again as an agent, really just because my sister was representing me, and she was like getting all these commissions off of me, and I knew how to do it. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, like I could be putting this money back into the deal or back into a rehab. And so if I know how to do it, it's awesome. Like I can put in an offer at 11 o'clock at night without having to bother anyone. And so other things have kind of like fallen into my lap, I guess. I didn't intend to be representing anybody, but I like to specialize in helping like newbie investors. And I found like a lot of success in that and just enjoyment. So it's exciting.
I love seeing the growth, Amanda, and I think it's a testament to what can happen when you really narrow in and focus on building a business for yourself, as opposed to just kind of climbing that corporate ladder. One other thing you mentioned I want to go back to is the time piece, right? So just so I clarify for me, are you still working your day job as well?
Yes.
So you've got your day job. You have a family, 3 small children underneath the age of 5, and you're building the short-term rental business. That is a lot to manage. That is a lot to kind of keep all the you're juggling a lot of things, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So how are you managing your time right now? Like, how are you making time to fulfill your work requirements, your family requirements, and still focus on building this business on the side?
Yeah, it's not easy, but it's worth it. Like, I think that if you have like a really strong why, it makes everything worth it in the end. So like I do a few different things. One, I try to involve my kids as much as possible. So I know that like sometimes you can let your why become your excuse. And so obviously I'm doing this to have more time freedom with my kids in the future. But that doesn't mean that I can't have them tag along now. And so I bring them to showings. Like my kids have been to so many properties and so many showings. Like, and sometimes I will say like the properties are so sketchy. Like I went to one a few weeks ago and I brought my kids and I ended up saying like, I'm going to lock the doors. Like, just stay in the car. Just stay in your car seats. Like, I'll be right back. This is going to be really fast. I know it's going to be fast because there's not much to look at and it's disgusting. So when I came back out, there was a woman like circling my car. I think so they had gotten out of their car seats and they were like pounding on the back door. And I think that she thought I like kidnapped them or something. And I'm like, they're mine. They're okay. And she's like, okay. Like, I wasn't sure what's going on here. And so that was like just a funny story, but they've been to a lot of properties. One of them they call like the trash house. Like, I try to get them to help. Like, they've filled dumpsters with trash before. The other thing I do is like just small, like actionable things. I try to sneak into pockets of my day. So for example, today I'm working from home. I work from home most days. I have a really flexible schedule and I'm very fortunate for that. But I knew I had to, there's a property that I had a tenant reach out to me yesterday that she wants to move out. She's on a month-to-month lease at this point. She's been there for a while. And so I knew that this was an opportunity where I might want to sell and scale up. And so I knew I had to contact a 1031 lawyer today. And so during my lunch break, I made that phone call and it took 15 minutes. And it's just like one thing that I could sneak in. So like nights, weekends, just in between calls that I'm on, I have a lot of vacation time. So like whenever we close on a property, I always take a week of vacation to do whatever needs to be done to get it ready to rent. And then anything that can be automated, I love putting processes in place. So for example, on our short-term rentals, we have automated messages that go out like right when they book. They do auto book and then they get a message from us. I don't have to search for properties. Like I have certain searches on the MLS that come right to me. So I just check my email. Like I try to have as many processes as possible. And the other thing is I have like a really supportive husband. So, and it wasn't always that way. Like he and I are very, very different. Another test that I had taken actually through work is called the Colby. Have you guys heard of that one? It's like your MO, your method of operation. So it's like how you operate. And it's really important to know how you operate in comparison to the people that you work with. And so for me, one of the things that it determined was that I'm something called a long quick start, which means that I don't need a lot of information to dive into something. I execute really quickly, where my husband is very much opposite. Like he needs all the details. He maybe is a little bit more emotional about it than I am. Like he needs to be like brought along. And so one of the ways that I got him on board is just by communicating with him, keeping him in the loop about everything that I do. And then really just having him see how it's worked. So like buying this Treehouse property was very stressful. It was like a 9-month ordeal. And I don't think anything could be ever more stressful than that. And so I think that having gone through that really helped him to see that things can work out and just to have the confidence like that we've done this so many times, like we can continue to do it. And a huge win for us, and I'm so excited for him, is he actually put in his notice at his corporate job. And he's done a lot of things on the side. He has like other businesses on the side that he's managed over the years. And so he's going to kind of dive into that. But he's also in the winter time going to help us to build this business even bigger. So I'm excited to see what happens with that.
Amanda, I want to touch on the mom piece of it, because this is a question I'm sure you get asked a lot, is how do you balance it all? And it's a question that I get too. And honestly, I hate the question because I think large majority of the time it's asked to the moms and not the dads. Mm-hmm. And my husband should be the one that's getting asked that question. I mean, he works way more than me. He takes all the kids to their doctor's appointment. And I love that you said that part of why you can juggle it all is because you have a great spouse to co-parent with. And that's the same with me too. And so I dislike that question because I feel like especially now, I feel like that the household kind of responsibility has really shifted 50-50, where it's a lot more of husbands and wives, taking on the responsibility of the children and the housework, where, maybe 20 years ago, it was, the wife would stay at home, she'd balance everything, maybe have a career. So I always find that question interesting. And I really liked how you said, don't make your why become your excuse. And that resonated with me so much because I felt so much mom shame and guilt when I first started building my business, and I was not, present all the time. I was not doing everything my children needed. I was, handing them off to my mom to babysit sometimes so I could get work done. I was working late hours. My husband would take them out to the barn and, do stuff with them around the farm because I was working. And I think that because I didn't fit the mold that, my mom had done as staying home with the kids and everything, it was really hard for her to watch me not be that. But for me, it was, okay, my kids are young. And everyone would say to me, your kids are only young once. Well, my kids are only 10 once. They're only 15 once. They're only 20 once. And when I look back at my childhood, I don't remember being 2. I don't remember being 4. But I remember as I got older, what my life was like and what my relationship was like with my parents and what, we had a great life. I'm not complaining about that, but I want to have the time after I've built my business to spend more time with my kids and have that flexibility and that spontaneity as they're older. So you saying don't use your why as your excuse, like, oh, you know what? I need to hang out with my kids this weekend instead of going to look at that property. And then even including them. I think that's hard sometimes to figure out a way to include your kids in your work and it doesn't seem like you're dragging them along. Well, a couple things you can do is pay them. Mm-hmm. Okay. Then you can open up their own retirement account because they have earned income now too. Mm-hmm. My 5-year-old, he loves to go to properties if I give him a GoPro. I give him a GoPro and he is in charge of recording that whole property. When I took him to Seattle a couple of weeks ago, I have footage of inside of every single cabinet and cupboard of that house. But just like finding little ways for them to be involved and give them a little responsibility, I feel like has really helped my kids want to be part of our businesses. And the same with the farm. My husband, my 8-year-old, he works on the tractors. He's got his own tools. He knows how to change and fix different things on the tractors that I have no idea about. And I've just been kind of watching and learning. And I think that kids really do start to enjoy being involved in some of those things if they have the responsibility and have a fun little job to do. And it makes them seem like they're important too.
I just want to add, because I'm so glad you mentioned that statement, because I had that written down and circled on my paper as well, that, your why can be an excuse. And I think especially for people that are balancing family responsibilities or any responsibilities for that matter with trying to build a real estate business, it's easy to say, oh, I can't do this because of my kids. Or, oh, I can't do this because of my job, or I can't do this because of my, community obligations. But if anything, it should be flipped the other way to where it's like, I have to do this because of my kids, or I have to do this because of my whoever. Like, I've shared many times in the podcast before, right, that I was 16 when my son was born. And, I know a lot of other teenage parents that, went down a different path. And for me, it was like, I have to figure this out because I need to be there for him. So I have to go out and get a college degree. I have to go out and build a business. I have to go out and do these things because I want to make sure that I can provide for him, that I can provide for my family. So yeah, that really stuck with me too, Amanda. So I'm so glad you shared that.
Tony, I want to ask you real quick, how many times have you been asked that? Like, how do you juggle family and raising your kids?
Actually, I have gotten that question quite a bit, but I think I'm also very vocal about how important my family is to me.
Yeah.
So I think that's what kind of leads into those questions more often than not. But I can say I don't think anyone's ever made me like feel guilty about building my business while also trying to be a parent.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the way I look at it is like, I could continue down this path of like climbing this corporate ladder and seeing my kids even less, or I could see them a little bit less now and then hopefully have the time freedom in the future. So that I think of that meme that always goes around. I think I shared it once on Instagram. It's like, the old flex was like nice cars and houses, but the new flex is like time freedom. Mm-hmm. And I so resonate with that. And that's like all we want really in life, my husband and I.
Yeah, I think that's a great example what you just said right there. Like, yeah, I am gone traveling sometimes for 3-4 days at a time, But then when I'm home, I get to be super present with my kids because those plane rides, I pound out work during those.
Yep.
And that's different. Like, yeah, there's somebody else that could be, well, I'm home every night to put my child to bed and you're not. But yes, you're gone 5 days a week, 9 to 5. Like, so every situation is different, but and it's however you want to look at it. But I agree with you. Like, it's that time freedom, and my kids, they get that, and I can be more present too. And I think that's a huge thing as a parent, is being able to not only have your kids in the same room, but being present and being able to enjoy that time. And that's what I really strive for too, Amanda. Okay, so let's push the mom, Amanda, away, and let's get back into just you as a real estate investor. So let's talk about how you're financing your deals, how you're finding your deals. Are you still active as a real estate investor now? Or I'm sorry, a real estate agent?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So
both.
Yes, to both. I am doing both. Really, though, I obviously don't have the time that I would like to have for being a realtor. Hopefully in the future, when I do eventually leave my corporate job, I definitely want to do that more. So right now I just focus on anybody who comes to me that is like a newbie investor, really. And the way that I differ than other agents is being able to understand what they're trying to do, because I've done it and I am an investor, and then helping them to really run the numbers and understand the numbers is very important. And I don't see a lot of agents, especially here in Maine, that are able to do that for clients. And then, yes, I'm investing actively. I've actually, like I said, I'm looking to do a 1031 exchange on a property. This will be my first time doing that. So I'm super excited, and it will force me to take action, because I had set a deadline for myself that I was going to buy my first multi-unit by August 8th. Actually, was like my deadline to be under contract that I had set for myself. So this opportunity coming up randomly, with this tenant wanting to move out by the end of the month, was actually like really cool. It was a blessing, and it's just going to force me to find that deal quickly. And so,
Amanda, what real quick, can you explain what a 1031 exchange is for somebody who doesn't know?
So I haven't done one before, and I'm not an expert, but I did talk to an attorney today. And basically, when I sell the property that I'm looking to sell, the money that I make will be held in an account, and then I'll have 45 days to identify a property. And then I'll have 180 days to close. So he said that the best way to do it is to identify a property that I'm under contract in, just to ensure, because if you identify, let's say, 3 properties and you don't go under contract on any of them, you actually get your money back on day 46 and you have to pay taxes on it. So it's really important to be under contract and for that to go through. So I will be taking very quick action after I sell. So the tenant will be out at the end of the month. I'll list it. And then they just need the information to hold the funds.
Yeah, so we did a 1031 exchange last summer, and the big benefit with the 1031 is that you're able to take 100% of the profits from a sale of a property and roll all of those funds tax-free into the next property. So you don't have to pay any taxes on what you gain from the sale of the property. Just one piece of advice for you, man. I'm glad you mentioned it, but yeah, like when we did our 1031 exchange, we waited a little bit too long to start identifying that next property. And it was bonkers last summer, right? Like trying to find good deals out there. So we were like, oh my God, it was like one of the most stressful things we've done was like trying to find that property before that time like elapsed on us. So it's definitely a very beneficial product for folks that are investing in real estate.
Yeah. And the market here in Maine is like very crazy. So it will be really important for me to identify a property right away. The other thing about it too that I learned was it has to be like a like property. It can't be worth less than what you're selling for. So I wasn't planning on that anyway. Like I'm trying to scale it into a bigger building. I was looking at a few 6 units. And so it doesn't have to be like, if it's a single family, it doesn't have to be another single family. You can do something. It just has to be more expensive, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that money doesn't even have to cover the cost of the property, of what your profit is. So say you're profiting $100,000, doesn't mean you have to go and buy $100,000 property. You could buy $1 million property and just use that $100,000 as part of your down payment, and then maybe bring another 100,000 of cash for the extra 10% of the 20% down payment, and then go and get a mortgage for the rest of the 80% too. So that is kind of like the great advantage of the 1031 exchange too, is when you are able to scale up so quickly using that.
And speaking of scale, that kind of leads me into my next question. So Amanda, you've scaled pretty quickly in the last couple of years. So just to remind me, so you bought that first single family residence like how long ago? Like a year and a half, 2 years ago?
Yeah, so it was in fall of 2020.
Okay, so we're coming up on 2 years. Not even a full 2 years yet. So to go from 0 to 6 units in about a year and a half is pretty impressive. So I think the question that jumps out at me that a lot of rookies are probably thinking is, how the heck are you funding all of these properties? So can you walk us through maybe just a few of the deals here, but how have you been able to finance and fund all of these purchases?
Yeah, so huge mistake on my first one. And I really just wanted to get one. But I ended up doing traditional financing in my own name as an investment property, and putting, I think it was 20% down at the time, just of money that I had saved, which was, fine. I wouldn't change it because I obviously learned a lot from doing that deal. And it's 5 minutes away from my house. It's right down the road. And so it's really convenient. And it's appreciated a lot even since then. So it's another one that I kind of want to see how this exchange goes, and then maybe turn that into something bigger as well. So then the second one, that was when I did the first one, it was prior to reading David Green's book on the BRRRR method. And so I didn't really understand, until I read that, I didn't really understand how people were coming up with all this money and putting 20% down on every single property. And so I didn't want to lose another 20%. So it was such an aha moment to find that book. And then I was still hesitant to use a lender or a private lender. So I knew that I had to do cash offers to get any deals around here because the market was crazy, and it still is. So I ended up getting a home equity loan, and it wasn't enough for the second property I was trying to buy. So instead of just you just don't know what you don't know. I would do this different as well, but I took out a personal loan to offset the amount. So I was using some cash that I had, a personal loan, and then my home equity to buy the property in cash. And then I bought a property that didn't need a ton of work. And so there wasn't a huge value add option there. So I did a cash out refi. And because this was only my second, I wasn't able to get more than, I think it was 70% out. So I ended up leaving a little bit of money in that deal. So the third try around was my golden one. And I'll talk about that when we do the deal deep dive. But I used a private hard money lender on that one, and it went much more smoothly.
Amanda, I've never used a personal loan before. Can you talk about what the process is for that and how you would get one, and maybe what the terms look like?
Yeah, so you obviously have to have good W-2 income to be approved, and good debt to income. That's the good thing about having a W-2 job, is it's going to be really hard for me to one day walk away from this, because I can get a loan for anything, anytime, anywhere. It's very easy for me to get loans.
You don't have to rub it into mine and Tony's face.
I don't have a problem.
Right? So if anybody wants a partner out there, that is my superpower, is that I can get a loan from anybody. And so it was just a small bank around here. They do a personal loan. I think it was 9%, which in comparison to hard money is a really good rate. And it was I think it was a $50,000 loan, and I was just paying, it was amortized maybe over 5 years. So the payments were kind of high. And I just paid the payments for a few months. I think it was 3 months until I could do the cash out refi. And I did a commercial loan on that. Was my first commercial, doing it under an LLC, and took out as much as I could and paid off the loan.
That's awesome. That's kind of using credit cards, I guess, in a sense. Yeah. But definitely a lower interest rate than if you were to use a credit card. There are the 0% interest credit cards out there too. But the thing I find that's hard for me with that is a lot of contractors won't take credit cards, so that, you can use your credit card for materials all day long, but for the actual labor, maybe a personal loan is a great way to go to pay contractors.
Yes, and some small banks also have something called a personal line of credit as well, where it's more of a variable rate, just like a home equity line of credit, just a little bit higher because it doesn't have the asset.
Before we move off of that, so we talked about the personal loan, but can you just walk through, for someone that isn't familiar with the HELOC, what exactly is a HELOC and what was the process for obtaining that loan as well?
Yeah, so a HELOC is, and this is where my banking expertise comes into play. I used to be a manager of a bank, like when I first started in banking. So I had done a lot of HELOCs. So basically it's a line of credit using the equity in your primary residence. And small banks tend to have really good rates. Like there's barely any closing costs. So whatever your house is appraised for, you can usually, in some cases, you can do up to 90% loan to value. So depending on how much you owe on your mortgage, you're able to take that equity. And it's just like a credit card, like Ashley said. So if you don't use it, it just sits there. And then if you do use it, it's interest only payments, usually for like the first 10 years. Some of them are different. So really small payments. And so it's really nice to be able to fund your own cash deals, pay interest only for however long you're doing the rehab, and then pay it off when you do the refinance after the project's done. So really good tool. Not a lot of people are comfortable using their personal asset, and I get that. But in our case, we've never seen the risk because we have so much equity in our home that we're comfortable doing it.
Yeah, so I love, Amanda, that you use like a collection of different funding sources to try and get all this done. Like I think for a lot of rookies, when they think about financing and funding that first deal, they're just thinking, how much money do I have? And 20% down. But there's so many other options out there. And as you start to do more deals, you get a broader exposure to the types of options that are available to you. Like for us in our flips, like right now, we use 100% private money for all of our flips, right? So we do all the work. The investor gets a really good return on their private money. And then we get to participate in the upside as well. So like as you do more deals, you get more comfortable, more confident with the different options that are out there to you. So we appreciate you sharing that. I want to talk a little bit about your spouse before we do the rookie deal review. So I invest with my wife, like she's my actual business partner. Like we talk business, all day, every day. And now she shared her experience, right, where her husband is supportive of her investing in real estate, but he's not involved in the day-to-day running of the business. And you kind of mentioned that your husband was maybe somewhat opposed to investing in real estate to begin with. So what was your process for getting your spouse on board? I think that's a question a lot of new rookies have because, you're drinking the Kool-Aid, you're listening to the podcast and they're kind of off living their own world. So what was that process like for you?
Yeah. So fortunately for me, my husband trusts me very much. And so if I tell him, that it's a good deal and we're going to buy it, he will eventually get on board, even if he puts up his hands, tries to stop me, he has many times. He'll eventually come around. So he just needs to feel like he understands it. So I always have to go through the numbers with him. And not only that, but I've sent him so many podcasts. He'll listen to podcasts while he's at his corporate job. And I've had him, he's read books. He actually read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And so and then just from experience, he's started to understand how it works. And I think his biggest fear going into this was he didn't want to get those calls in the middle of the night, right? There's water coming through the ceiling or whatever the horror stories are that you hear. And so having had a couple of rentals for over a year now, and we've never really had anything crazy happen where we get calls in the middle of the night. We did have one incident happen recently, but it was during the day. And it's there's always a solution. So you can always just find the person that you need to find to help you through that. So in this case, the furnace was leaking water. We were able to quickly get somebody over there. They needed to put an expansion tank, add an expansion tank, and it was a few $100s. And so it wasn't the end of the world. It was taken care of really quickly. And so the more times you go through that, I think you just start to build your confidence. So another quick story. I actually partner with my sister on the Treehouse property, and she's the one who operates the property. So we haven't talked about this yet, but it's more than just Treehouse rentals. It's kind of like a little business because there's an 18-hole disc golf course and there's a little store there and like multiple income streams. And so she's the one who's on site dealing with that. And so we closed April 19th. We started accepting bookings for Memorial Day weekend. So the first weekend that we had somebody staying there, I don't know how my number got involved, but I actually got a call at 10 p.m. And the people staying in our biggest treehouse said that the fridge was no longer working. And so my sister was super stressed out. She was so worried. And I was like, listen, bring a cooler over there, get their food on ice, and we'll have a fridge there in the morning and we'll replace it. Like, it is what it is. Like, this is no big deal. I had just replaced like a stove at another property that I have. Like, we're going to take care of it. And so once she went through that, she was like, oh, wow, like no big deal. And we actually got a really good review. Our first review was from them and they were super happy with how we handled it. So, it just takes time for some people and just to like live through it.
Amanda, I think that what you did there was you communicated with the guest. And I think that goes like a long way instead of like panicking and being like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? And kind of like avoiding the guests. You figure it out and you took action, even though it wasn't bringing in a brand new fridge right away. It was at least something. And I think that, when I did my own property management, that went such a long way, is making an effort in the communication, opposed to just like, okay, sorry, we can't get a fridge there until tomorrow or something, but doing every little thing you can do. And Tony, I think I've seen you and Sarah make videos how even just refunding some money can show like that you're making an effort and you like understand that this is a huge convenience and it's actually turned around to be into your favor too. So I think that's like a great tidbit on the property management side, whether short-term or a long-term rental too.
Yeah.
So Amanda, are you going to do the Treehouse for your deal that we go over, or are you going to do a different one? Because, hearing multiple income streams, that just gets me turned on in general. So we can do both if you want.
We can do both because that one's not as exciting because we don't have like a lot of the finances where we just started. This is like our first full month is June.
Yeah.
So I have a little bit of like information on that one, but I wanted to do another one that was,
Okay. Let's since we're on the Treehouse one, just give us a little backstory on like, how did you even come about this? And then we can go into we don't have to go into the numbers on it. We can do that on the other one if you want.
Yeah. So my sister, who's the realtor, actually found the deal. So I have two sisters. The one that's the realtor found the deal. The other one is the one that I partner with. So she knew that I'm always investing in real estate, and she knows I wanted to do vacation rentals. I wasn't thinking of tree houses. I was thinking more of like on the coast of Maine, like the beach. But this one came up, and my older sister had expressed that like she had been in a career for 15 years where she sits at a computer all day long. And she had been talking for like the year before about how she wants to do something different. Like she wants to figure something else out. There's more to life than just staring at a computer for like 9 hours a day.
You don't say.
Yeah, right? And so my little sister who found it was like, text it to us. She's like, you guys, you have to see this. And so the three of us ended up going out there to look at it. And it was, so just a little information on it. It was owned by like a family, and they had shut down like when COVID happened, and I think the family had like a falling out and they were never able to really get it back up and running. And it had only been running since like 2015. And so what the owners did was they turned it into their primary residence and waited 2 years. And then so we went under contract last fall, but we weren't able to close until this April because they wanted to not have to pay capital gains, which was actually really smart when they sold it. So that's great for them. But what was difficult about this is people were passing it up and banks were passing it up because there's no financials for the past 2 years because they've been living there. And so it made it really difficult. They did have some old tax returns, but they had very creative tax strategies. Like, it just wasn't looking good. However, I knew that the numbers were good. I knew what we could rent it for. And there are actually a couple other Treehouse rental properties in Maine that I had used, and they were 100% booked, like for a couple years out. And so I knew that these would book. And I knew that we could make it work somehow because there was more than just the rentals. The rentals are the big moneymaker, but there's also other ways to make money there. And for us, like, we have made a bunch of apparel that we're selling, and like just the options are endless. It's really cool. So it was on the market for $725, and we got it under contract for $710. And I had talked to a commercial lender prior to that, and I was like, do you think I would be approved for something like this? Like, I know I can usually get loans, like, and he's like, oh yeah, like, this shouldn't be a big deal. So I knew we couldn't close until April, so I didn't start the application process until January. And so when I actually did it, and we didn't have the financials because it was more of like a business, it was making the financing really difficult, and actually made me question a few times, like, if we were even going to be able to get a loan on it. We looked down the SBA route, which is very expensive. And so I talked to this is where like networking comes into play. I randomly talked to my CPA about it, who's awesome. And he recommended a smaller bank. And so I went through this smaller bank, and we got pretty far down the application process, and they just decided they weren't interested. So it was like a little bit risky for them. Like, we were having a hard time getting insurance. Like, they just thought it was too risky, and we didn't have a relationship with that bank. So we were like a couple months out at this point, and I started to get super nervous. We had put a lot of money into it. We had already started the branding. So we were in deep, and I ended up going with, so my friend Matt, who was my mentor, who I've used to work with, he got me in touch with a smaller bank, and he's like, if these guys can't do it, like, just go to them. And so it's a smaller bank here in Maine, and they had some common sense because like all four of us, my sister, her husband, my husband, we all had full-time jobs. Like, we can afford a $3,300 mortgage or whatever it was. And so they really looked at it like objectively, and they're the type of bank where they can just make those decisions. We were talking to the decision maker, which is really nice. And so he was like, yeah, like, we're going to do it. Like, this makes total sense. I know you guys can do it. We had to do a business plan for him. And then the next hurdle was that nobody would go out there to appraise it. So this is in Stoneham, Maine. It's like Western Maine, winter time, snow. You'd have to hike to the tree houses. Like, nobody would do it. So we found one man who would do it like a couple weeks out from the closing. And he cost $5,000 out of pocket. And so we had to pay that, knowing that there's an opportunity that this might, like, there's not a lot of comps. Like, what are they going to use? They ended up using like some campgrounds and stuff. But if it came in really low and the sellers wanted to pull out, we're out the $5,000 for the appraisal and the money that we've put in, like, to start our branding and all of that. So, and all the time. And we had been in this for like 9 months at this point. So there was a lot on the line. And anyway, it ended up working out just fine. It appraised at what it needed to. We actually got it for a little bit less. But then we were on a time crunch because the busy season in Maine was starting right away. We closed on April 19th. We started booking them on Airbnb the very next day. I got it right up. And then we knew we were going to have guests on the 27th of May. So we had like a little over a month. And in Maine right now, like, one of the huge challenges is getting people to work. Like, you can't find anybody. Everybody is booked out for everything, painting, contractors, everything. And so especially in this location with like a property like Treehouses, like, it's just impossible. So we had to like bust our butts to clean these places out. They had been dormant for 2 years, so they're really dirty. A lot of stuff. We wanted to upgrade the furnishing, so we got a dumpster, and me and my sister were out there like every day, just like throwing things out of tree houses, like getting them all cleaned up, doing it all ourselves. And not only like getting the rentals ready, but we had to learn how to set up a business. Like everything costs money when you start a business. So a lot of things we tried to do ourselves. Like I built a website. We had to get merchant services and QuickBooks and all of these things set up. So it's a huge learning curve. But it's like at the point where we can kind of breathe now. We've had some guests, like we're operating. And I feel kind of like I could buy another business. Like, I was like talking to my husband, like, do you need a website? Like, I know how to build a website now. Like, let's do it. So
yeah, it kind of reminds me of a Heather Blankenship story where she bought her first RV park, and she was like, building the plane while she was flying it, right? And I think she said she like literally lived at the campground. She was like sleeping like in the back office.
My sister lives there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love the grind, but like you said, when you do it one time, it really builds that confidence to kind of move on to the next piece. Well, thank you for sharing that story, man. We got to keep in touch so you can share how this turns out for you once you guys are up and running.
Yeah, if anybody wants to like see or rent a place or see what we have, our website goes to our social media too, and it's inthetreesmaine.com. So the name of the property is In the Trees.
Tony, rookie road trip. Let's do it.
There we go. Stoneham, Maine. I've never been before, but I'm down.
Yes, play some disc golf.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's check out your other deal. We'll just give you some rapid fire questions real quick about it if you just want to give us some short answers, and then we can just kind of go through the numbers through it. So what strategy is this property?
This is a burr.
Okay, and where is it located?
So it's actually in Waterboro, Maine, which is a very random small town.
And how much did you purchase it for?
So I purchased it for $159.
And how did you find the deal?
So it was actually on the MLS, and at the time I was putting a lot of offers in. I put in an asking price offer, thinking I would never get it, and I didn't. And I kept putting other offers in, and then they actually came back to me. So I'm not sure what happened, but like weeks later they came back and said, we'll accept your offer. But just so you know, this is a short sale, which is very rare right now. Like who has a short sale? So the downside of a short sale is that it takes a few months to close. They're slow.
Ever.
Yeah. And so I think that's why some other people may have walked away from it. And not only that, but there was a lien on the property. So it was in an association and they hadn't paid in a couple of years. So there's like a couple $1,000s that needed to be paid off at closing. So I was willing, it still worked for my numbers. So I was willing to pay that and wait the 3 months just because I wasn't getting any other deals at the time. And so, yeah, MLS.
How did you finance the deal then?
So then this is my first time using a hard money lender. And this was actually a guy that my husband worked with, and he had done it before. And so it was really like off the side of his desk, like he had just signed it and gave me a check. Like it was very informal, and it almost made me nervous how informal it was. And the deal, it was like really good terms. So he gave us the $159. We were going to fund the rehab on our own, and it was 10% amortized over 6 months. So it ended up being like less than $8,000 that we paid him in the end. And there was no fees, and we didn't have to pay him like any interest or any payments as we went. We just paid him the one lump sum at the end. So it was really, really easy.
That's awesome. And then for the rehab, how much did the rehab cost you?
So the rehab only cost us $15,000. We did a lot of the work ourselves because, like I said, it's really hard to get contractors right now. And this was like one of those properties that was like a gem, just like it was kind of like a hoarder house. So it just looked really bad. But once we cleaned it up and did fresh paint and stuff, it was really just like, what do they say? Cosmetic.
You get all the junk out and you...
Yeah, there were some things that we
we
subbed out a few things. Like there was a couple electric issues that we subbed out, and I couldn't get a painter to save my life, and I was like 9 months pregnant when we closed on this. And I do paint and I enjoy it, and I think I'm good at it. But I was pregnant and I did not want to do it. So I was like begging people. I ended up finding an old school teacher that does it in the summer, and he's like, well, I can do it, but I only have X amount of time. And so I had to prioritize having him do the exterior. So I actually painted the entire interior myself. My husband did the wallpaper removal with me, which is a nightmare. And so I also gave birth during this rehab and then had to go back. So then I had time off of my job and my husband was working and we had to get it done so we could get it rented. So 2 weeks post having my baby, I brought him with me to the property and finished it. And so I had to like set him up by the door with like fans so that he wasn't like breathing the fumes. Like it was the whole setup. Fortunately, he was like a really chill baby and he would just like sleep. And I was able to finish it and get it rented out really quickly.
Love that. Resilience.
Yeah. So what did the property end up as? What did it appraise for and what did it rent for?
Yeah. So I was like I said, we hadn't put a ton of money into it and we got a really good, but I knew we got a really good deal. So I was like so nervous when the appraiser came. I was like, hi, how are you? Like, do you want to do all the work we've done here? And I was like spilling all the work and like, it ended up appraising at $265, which was awesome because we could easily pay back the lender and ourselves for the rehab. I wanted to take out even more so that I could use those funds on another property. However, because I was still new with this bank, they wouldn't let me take more than I think it was like 70% or 75%, which was unfortunate, but it kept my mortgage really low. And the place rents for $2,000 a month and my mortgage is like less than $1,000. So we cash flow like almost $800 a month on that one random property.
That is absolutely amazing, Amanda, and love hearing like these are the stories that people don't always hear, right? They see the unit count, they see you went from 0 to 6 in less than 2 years, but they don't hear the stories of you taking a 2-week-old baby with you to paint this new unit, right?
I don't recommend that, by the way.
But it worked out. So, all right, as we wrap things up, Amanda, I want to take you to our rookie exam. These will be the 3 most important questions you have ever been asked in your entire life. So are you ready for the exam?
I guess I'm ready as I'll ever be.
All right. So first question, what is one actionable thing rookies should do after listening to your episode?
Yeah, so I am in a business coaching group here in Maine. It's actually called Success Doesn't Come to Chicken. So really interesting type of coaching group, very aggressive. But the guy who runs it had us do like this really cool activity where basically you write down, you just start going, you write every single thing about your perfect day. Like, where are you? What time do you wake up? How much do you work? What are you doing for work? Where's your family? Like, and you just make this perfect day and then you work backwards from there. And so every day when you're making decisions on what you're going to do, you have that vision in your head of what you want to do. So you take small action towards getting to that goal. And so it's been, pretty life-changing for me. And I recommend it to anybody who maybe wants to do something different with their life.
That's great. I really like that. It's taking it one step further from just like, okay, what's your goal is like, okay, I want to, cash flow $10,000 a month, but actually taking that vision and it's like having a vision board and then building it backwards. So our next question is, what is one tool, software, app, or system in your business that you use?
A couple. So I do use apartments.com for my long-term rentals. But I did just start using for my short-term rentals, it syncs the different booking systems. I know there's a bunch of them. The one I use is called Logify. And the reason why I really like using them is because their customer service is really good. And when I was trying to get started, they were just having Zoom calls with me. I've had like a few different hour-long Zoom calls that they recorded and sent back to me that I was able to share with my sister. And they really walked me through exactly how it works. And not only that, but I had set up Airbnb because I just wanted to get it going right away. And then I set up Logify, and Logify set me up on Vrbo and booking.com. And so I didn't have to do any of that. They took the information and like set those up for me, which was really cool. It was a ton of work that I didn't have to do setting those up on those other systems. And they also have really good auto messages. They don't take a fee. I pay like a one-time, once a year annual fee, but then they don't take a percentage out of what we make, which is really cool too. So I found it to be a good deal. I haven't tried any others though, so I'm not totally sure. And then the other thing that I really like that I use is Mile IQ. So that tracks my mileage, and then I can also categorize it because I have mileage for a few different businesses now. So if I'm going to the Treehouses, it's different than if I'm going to realtor showings. And so I need to be able to categorize, and then my husband's on there as well. So
awesome. Cool. Last question. Where do you plan on being in 5 years?
I love this question. Like I said, I just talked about that like vision thing, but in 5 years, well, first of all, I'll be on the Bigger Pockets real estate podcast.
There you
just
go.
going to say that right now.
I love it.
And my husband and I won't be working our corporate jobs. We'll be waking up, deciding what we're going to do with our day, maybe working a couple of hours, homeschooling our children, and having that time freedom to just up and go anywhere, anytime, whenever we feel like it.
That's great. I love to hear that. Before we wrap up, I just want to give a shout out to this week's rookie Rockstar, which is Ian Wilson. So in January 2021, he went full-time real estate investor, and now he has 2 deals under contract and is going to net their company $91,000 this month. And he said, don't give up. Your big breakthrough is coming. And we had just had James Daynard on a couple months ago where he talked about it took him 1 whole year to get his first wholesale deal done. So this is another great example of this that Ian has, is to just keep going and don't give up. So he had a mobile home. The purchase price was around $15,000. The rehab, $34,550. His total investment, $179,000, and the sale price, $205,000. And that's an example of one of the properties that added to their company's profit this month, and that was for $25,000. So great job, Ian, and keep it up. We'll have to have Ian on the show too. Well, Amanda, thank you so much for joining us. Can you tell everyone where they can find out some more information about you and reach out to you?
Yeah, so I'm trying to build my social media. I try to, post as much as I can. You can just find me. My name is Amanda Salovitch, Salovitch, on Facebook and Instagram. And then if you're interested in the Treehouses, it's just inthetreesmaine.com.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. Loved your story. Loved hearing about your investing, and the Treehouses was really cool. We never had anybody come on and talk about that yet. So thank you so much for joining us. I'm Ashley at Wealth from Rentals, and he's Tony at Tony J. Robinson. And we will be back on Saturday with a rookie reply.